Every gamer remembers their first console. That moment when you picked up the controller, powered it on, and heard that startup sound. For some, it was the Nintendo. For others, PlayStation or Xbox. And maybe for the true veterans out there, it was Pong. But the story of video game consoles isn't just about games. It's about technology, culture, and entire generations growing up with these machines at the center of their lives. So let's rewind from plastic overlays taped onto TVs to machines that can render 4K ray tracing. This is the full history of video game consoles. (1972), before Mario, before Master Chief, before Fortnite dances, the very first home console arrives. The Magnavox Odyssey. Now, console is a generous word. It had no sound, no color, barely any graphics. Instead, you got these plastic overlays you literally stuck onto your TV screen. Want to play tennis? Stick a tennis court overlay up and pretend those white blocks are players. Imagine dropping $100 in the 70s, which is like $700 today, and all you get is a roll of stickers and some blocks. But still, this was the spark. The Odyssey was the first time families could play video games at home, and it cracked open the door for everything that came next. Then came the Atari. The Atari 2600, released in 1977, changed everything. It had interchangeable cartridges, one console, infinite games. Suddenly your living room could host Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Pitfall. This was gaming's first golden age. But Atari also gave us one of gaming's first great disasters. E.T. the Extraterrestrial. This game was so rushed and so bad that kids were returning it faster than they could sell it. Atari ended up dumping millions of unsold cartridges in a New Mexico landfill. Yeah, they literally rage quit into the desert. Still, Atari had proven something huge. Video games weren't just a passing fad, they were here to stay. But then came the crash. 1983, the market was flooded with bad games and too many consoles. People lost faith. Enter Nintendo. In 1985, they dropped the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and single-handedly revived gaming. It wasn't just a console, it was Mario, it was Zelda, it was Metroid. These weren't just games. They were characters, universes, icons. And Nintendo didn't stop. In 1989, they gave us the Game Boy. Portable gaming. Tetris in your pocket. The screen was green. The batteries died quick, but man, if you had a Game Boy at recess, you were a king. Meanwhile, Sega was stepping up with the Genesis. They gave the world Sonic the Hedgehog, and suddenly, it was Mario vs Sonic. Nintendo kids versus Sega kids. It was Pepsi versus Coke, Marvel versus DC, the first true console war. Commercials literally trashed each other. Sega even ran the slogan, "Genesis does what Nintendo don't." Petty? Yes. Iconic? Also yes. And then Sony. Here's the wild part. Sony was originally supposed to partner with Nintendo on a CD-based console. That deal fell apart, and Sony said, fine, we'll make it on our own. And in 1994, they released the PlayStation. Cartridges were gone, discs were in, games could finally be bigger, longer, and more cinematic. Crash Bandicoot, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear Solid. These weren't just games, they were cultural moments. And that PlayStation 1 startup sound still sends shivers down spines. By the time the PlayStation 2 launched in 2000, Sony was on top. The PS2 sold over 155 million units. To this day, it's the best-selling console of all time. And honestly, half those sales were just parents buying it as a cheap DVD player. Then 2001 hits. Microsoft enters the chat with the original Xbox. And with it came one word, Halo. Halo wasn't just a launch title, it was a revolution. LAN parties, split-screen chaos, Master Chief becoming an icon, and then Xbox Live. Forget about it, online multiplayer went mainstream. Sure, PlayStation had the PS2 juggernaut, but Xbox was carving out its space. The Xbox 360 versus PlayStation 3 era, pure chaos. The 360 had Halo 3, Gears of War, Xbox Live, but it also had the Red Ring of Death, an epidemic of consoles dying. Meanwhile, the PS3 launched at $599. Sony literally said, get a second job. It was messy, it was glorious, and it was peak console war energy. By the 2010s, consoles had gone next level. PlayStation 4, Xbox One, HD graphics, huge online communities, esports on the rise. And then, Nintendo does what Nintendo always does, goes weird. In 2006, they dropped the Wii, motion controls, Wii Sports, and the absolute cultural phenomenon of grandma bowling strikes in the living room. Everyone, from little kids to your parents, was suddenly gaming. Then in 2017, Nintendo struck gold again with the Switch, portable and home console. Mario, Zelda, Pokemon on the go. Today we've got the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, and the Switch OLED. Insane graphics, massive libraries, and if you can actually find one in stock, you're basically winning the lottery. So what's next? Cloud gaming, handheld PCs, VR, AR. The lines between console, PC, and mobile are already blurring. And who knows, in 10 years your console might just be in your brain. Imagine rage quitting inside your own head. That's the future. So that's the story, from plastic overlays in the 70s to Wi-Fi routers that run 4K games in the 2020s. But here's the real question. What was your first console? Were you a Nintendo kid? A Sega kid? Did you grow up with PlayStation, or did Xbox Live shape your childhood trash talk? Drop it in the comments and subscribe before I try to play Wii bowling on the Magnavox Odyssey.